So, welcome, Omar. Thanks for taking a bit of time out of your, I'm sure, fairly busy day to have a little chat with me. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the company?
Absolutely. So I'm Omar Hamdi, founder and CEO of Pathos Communications. We are the world's only pay on results PR firm, so we're a tech-enabled PR firm, and our mission is really to make the media work for the world's 400 million entrepreneurs, almost all of whom have never been in the news, but they should be.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, tell us a little bit, how does that work?
Well, I think the real thing is beginning by explaining that it's possible. I think, and a lot of our teams spend a lot of time just educating potential clients on the fact that this is possible. And you can't blame them for thinking it's impossible. Because if you take any news source, any newspaper, go to the newspaper website, click on business on the top menu. First of all, probably about half the stories will actually be political stories. There'll be stories about tariffs or the budget or inheritance tax, which is really a political story that affects business rather than a true business story, in my humble opinion. The other half that are actually about business, look at the names of the companies that they're writing about and just Google the revenue of those companies. And usually it's $1 billion plus companies. So a lot of what we do just begins by speaking to entrepreneurs, founders, owners of SMEs or SMBs in the US, as they're called, and explaining that this is possible. Just because the ancient PR industry doesn't want you as a customer doesn't mean it's impossible. It's absolutely possible, and your voice should be heard, and we can make it happen.
Brilliant. And in terms of media outlets, are you talking newspapers or would it be much wider than that now?
Um, it's interesting. So when I say the media, I mean the legacy media, the traditional media. So I'm not talking about getting you LinkedIn followers.
Yeah,
Um, uh, but the legacy media has really become either entirely online or largely online. So if you look at The Independent, for example, great newspaper, not a newspaper anymore. It's an online only newspaper, which is a polite way of describing a website. Yeah. Take Mail Online. I think in a lot of surveys, Mail Online is the number one news source in the world, certainly in the English speaking world. And most of those people come across Mail Online, not the Daily Mail, the newspaper that we all know as Brits. So it's the trust and the credibility that comes from traditional media, where there are still these people called journalists and these people called editors. And it's not like posting something on Facebook where you can post anything, and if it gets enough likes, it goes viral. There's still that human review. There's still that stamp of approval, that stamp of authenticity. But of course, the traditional media is not really that traditional anymore because it's all online. So you get that boost of something being online. Google is forever, good or bad. Google is forever. And you get a lot more value from the asset than if it was, as we say, tomorrow's fish and chip paper, if it was just a physical newspaper.
absolutely. And I always find if I work with a business owner who's done over a million turnover, or we've got them through a million plus turnover, they're so surprised when I say to them, welcome to the 4% club. There's only about 4% of UK businesses scale to a million plus. So that means 96% of businesses haven't broken through the £1 million mark. And as you said, probably wouldn't think that they could afford or they could get quality PR in the mainstream, as you say, legacy media. So how do you then you talked about when we spoke about educating that marketplace? I'm assuming you got to do some work to get them to realize that it's even possible to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that educational side of what we do is actually, I was going to say it's as important as the commercial side. Well, you can't separate the two because we're taking really an existing type of service, but we're taking it to a market that has never experienced it before. So you've got to explain to that new market how this new version of an existing product, and the PR industry isn't new, it's 100 years old. The phrase public relations was invented, I think, in the 1920s by Edward Bernays, a very interesting man, happened to be Sigmund Freud's nephew. So the PR industry isn't new, but what we're doing is new. And it's, I think the most important thing is to just tell people that they matter and that they should be heard, and that just because you look at the news and it's Meta, Nvidia, Tesla, that's not representative of reality. And actually, sometimes the more interesting stories are the stories that me and my team discover every day of entrepreneurs with all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of stories, all kinds of struggles. And the media loves them. The media wants these stories. These are great, human interest stories, but also really good business stories.
And is that the sort of story that's quite typical, sort of, oh, I was a rags to riches, or my dad got me into the business, these kind of people do like, I mean, I'm assuming why a lot of people buy business people's biographies. They like to hear that they came from an ordinary background and they made it well. Is that a typical story, or is it much, much wider than that?
I mean, it is wider, but I think that's one of the typical types of story. And what part of the intellectual property we've got is we've created an ontology of news stories. So there are only 13 types of news stories when it comes to business stories. So I guarantee you we could look at hundreds of thousands of business stories, and every single one of them would fall into one of these 13 buckets or 13 templates. If you like, I won't bore you with the details. We probably don't have enough time to get into all of that, and I can get very, very geeky about all of this. But one of the 13 types is really just a profile piece, and nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. If someone's worked at their business for 20 years or even 20 months and they've built something special and they want that sort of third party endorsement, if you like, of saying, look, this is my story, this is what I've been through, and this is where we've ended up. This is the business that I've built, or that we've built, if it's co-founders. That's an absolutely valid story, and actually editors quite like that kind of stuff. The only reason editors don't publish more of that stuff is that usually those kinds of subjects don't have the firepower of a big PR firm that they can pay 20 grand a month to.
Of course, yeah. In your day as a CEO, founder, what do you have something you would describe as a routine, or is every day very different?
I've got absolutely no routine at all. So I'm a bit weird, really. I don't sleep like normal people. So it's very rare for me to sleep for more than sort of 2 or 3 hours at a time. And then I'll wake up and I might do some reading or catch up on emails or do some work, then maybe have another nap after that. So absolutely no routine. And I think it works. I mean, we've got clients in 53 countries. So we've got pretty much every time zone covered. And even though I don't do client-facing work really anymore, it's still important to see what's happening and check up on different operations.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Is there any mistakes that you would, or some people say, was it Mandela's been credited? I don't know if it's true, but anyway, Mandela's been credited with saying he's never made any mistakes. He's only learned. He's either succeed or you learn. That's an interesting way of looking at it, isn't it? Would you say you've made any mistakes that you would do differently if you were in business starting again?
I think in business and in life, it's really, really, really dangerous to think about mistakes. I love that quote, actually, of it being a lesson rather than a mistake, because I think there are more people in the world beating themselves up because of mistakes than there are people in the world who've really sort of focused on a mistake and got something positive out of it. So I think learn and change, but then literally forget about it. Like imagine it never happens. The only
Yeah,
thing you need from it is the lesson.
yeah, 100%. If you can learn from it, as you said, there's some value in it, and a lot of people learn. You know, find that's a great way to success. Was it Stephen Bartlett said that the modern business owner, I'm sure he's predominantly talking about tech, but nevertheless, should fail their way to success. You should try so many things that you'll find a way to succeed, but that means you're gonna have a lot of failures on route. He actually says if you're not failing, you're not innovating. There's not enough innovation, which is interesting.
But I'm not familiar with Mr. Bartlett's aphorisms. But clearly lots of people are. Yeah.
No, 100%. So anybody particularly comes to mind from your point of view when you think of success? Do you have any particular people you admire?
I think it's really difficult because success is different for every person. You know, for one person, success, even if we just talk about the financial aspect of success, which is actually just a tiny, tiny subset of success, you know, for some people, financial success is making an extra a couple of $1,000s a month or a couple of £1,000 a month so they can pay for private school fees. And that's success with an absolutely capital S. But then you speak to billionaires who are still working, so clearly the itch has not been completely scratched, and there's still something else they're trying to do. And I think again, financial success is just a small subset of that, and or even something like having a family. Try trading money for someone's kids. It's very difficult,
Yeah, yeah,
even if
yeah.
someone's in real poverty. So I think it's important to try to look at things in the round. Obviously, speaking as business people, this is a business podcast, so I'm probably being overly philosophical there. I think even in the business sense, success is different, and I think it's important for everyone to know what they want out of growing a business, and really focus on that, and not be swayed by different fashions. There might be a fashion of, raising as much money as possible as early as possible. Then there's the fashion of, bootstrapping. We're all bootstrapping, or, I think different industries as well. Do you remember NFTs? Does anyone remember NFTs? What happened to NFTs? How many NFT startups were created? How many Web3 metaverse? So does anyone remember the metaverse? Remember when Mark Zuckerberg went on the news with it looked like a really weird, boring video game. And he was telling us we're all going to live in the metaverse. And then he realized, actually, Facebook's quite good. Let's just focus on. So I think it's important to not follow fashions.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I actually come across, actually some great entrepreneurs who are pulled in too many directions because they want to be fashionable. Actually, knowing what you want and just doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on it, that's the most powerful thing. My favorite kind of business is the most boring businesses, things that have been going on for decades, making profits every year for decades, growing gradually, growing sustainably, with a loyal team around them, just quietly creating lots and lots of value, without being cool, without being necessarily on any magazine covers.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, there's plenty of them, that's for sure. I mean, it's interesting because Jim Collins wrote the book Good to Great, and in that book he says he did research on companies over, I think, a 30-year period, and most of them were not well-known people. The ones that were a long-term success. There weren't household names. There weren't people out there writing books and going on TV and all that sort of stuff, which is pretty interesting. Which is the opposite of what most people. Which is partly why the job you're doing, in a way, that the people we are dominated by are entrepreneurs who are very wealthy, who like publicity, and therefore the stereotype of a sort of business owner is that kind of Donald Trump kind of Alan Sugar type figure, which is actually the average family run business is actually often very, very different from that. They're not necessarily pop.
Absolutely.
publicity seekers
Absolutely.
or anything like that.
Absolutely. And I jumped on a content call several weeks back, just to sort of keep my hand in. I just sort of surprised the content team. I said, right, next call, send it to me. And it was just an amazing story. On the surface, most boring business you can imagine. It's a business, I think it's in somewhere in the rural US, somewhere that, I'd never think about. And what they do is the connections between water pipes in sewage systems. So they don't even make the water pipes. That's too exciting. They do the connectors that hold two water pipes together and make sure that the pipes don't split and sewage goes everywhere. And you might think, how do you write about that? That's no one wants to read about the connections between water pipes, the stop, so like what? But then you look at the story behind the business and you speak to the CEO and he says, this business, we bought it out of bankruptcy and we went to 30 lenders and no one would lend us the money for it. But then we on our final attempt, someone gave us the money for it. And this is how we grew it. And these are the challenges we faced. And now it's a family business. And my daughter-in-law does the marketing and my son-in-law does engineering. And it's what an amazing story. It's just an amazing story. It's like something, you could make a TV show out of it if you wanted to, because within that, there are all these little dramas and little challenges. And, it's been going 20 years. I'm sure in those 20 years, there have been times when everything could have fallen apart. So it's
100%, yeah.
These are amazing stories.
No, brilliant, brilliant. So from your point of view, then, what would you describe success as? How do you see success?
A very difficult question, Mr. Asari. I'll leave that for the philosophers of the world, like Stephen Bartlett. I can't.
No, fair enough. So what? So in terms,
I think the most important thing for me is that if I walked out of my office now and I was hit by a bus, I gave it my best shot and I didn't hold back and I didn't put limitations in place for what I could do or what the people around me could do.
nice.
Maybe it's not Stephen Bartlett quality, but maybe that's my
no, as you said, everybody's got their what they describe it as, which is fine. Yeah. The other thing is 5 years time. Where do you see your business in the next 5 years?
So I think Pathos has over the last few years really validated the model, validating its platform. So we've got clients in 53 countries. We've been growing fast, completely bootstrapped, completely self-funded growth, recognized by the UBS Fast Growth Index as the fastest growing professional services firm in the UK. Financial Times said we're the 33rd fastest growing company of any type in Europe. So to do that without any funding, without a head start, clearly we're onto something. So I think we've validated what we're doing. We've got something. It's not a fluke. If it's a fluke, we've been lucky in enough years in a row that maybe it's not a fluke anymore. So to answer the question, I think we do have a path over the next 5+ years. And I'd stress the plus. You don't know how long these things are going to take. We do have a path over the next 5+ years to build a business with around about $100 million in revenue. And I think that the two ways to really make that happen are by further internationalization of the business and more technology. Those are really the two big levers that we're already pulling, but we're going to pull harder and harder over the next few years.
I like it. No, brilliant. One of the challenges in scaling businesses is bringing on staff, and the challenge of how do you get good people? How have you? What's your successes in that, or is it something you're still working on? How do you surround yourself by good people?
So first of all, I want to say it's one of the things that I'm most proud of about Pathos is the quality of our team. In particular, the quality of our management team. And I'm very, very proud. And I was just having this conversation earlier today I'm very, very proud that we've never used a headhunter. We've never tried to recruit someone who is the finished product. We actually don't like finished products because finished products are someone else's product. We want our own products. We want our own homegrown in-house products. And something that it's one of the things that makes me most proud about Atos actually is that we have people from so many different backgrounds. Only one of our employees out of 55, 56 people, only one of our employees ever worked in PR before working with us. So we're a broad church. And wherever someone comes from, whatever their background is, we can give them the tools, the technology, the processes, the support, the human support to develop. So I think part of the answer is seeing every new starter on day one as potentially a multi-year investment that potentially can have multi-year returns for the company. But also accepting that most people are not going to be multi-year investments, especially now. People do job hop and it's becoming more normal and more acceptable. The direction of travel is very, very clear. You know, the lifetime of an employee in one organization is getting shorter and shorter and shorter, especially in sort of the digital space. So you have to also accept that, you know, maybe this isn't going to be a multi-year relationship. Maybe it isn't going to have a multi-year payoff. And maybe this person's going to come in for a year and do a good job and, you know, get on the bus at a particular stop and get off at a particular stop. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you've got to make sure that your business is robust enough that you're not trying to lock the bus doors and stop people getting off when they want to get off, because then maybe you need to improve your bus. And I'd say the other thing is you don't need that many multi-year investment, multi-year payoff people.
Yeah, true.
You only need a few people. And also, a lot of the time, it's not you, it's them. You're relying on getting someone at the right point in their life and in the right mind space, in the right mindset, where, you know, their personal life is either driving them towards professional progression or at the very least not getting in the way of professional progression. And you can't control all of these things. And I think entrepreneurs need to accept that you can't control people. You know, what you can control is how robust your business is. And does it take a new person 1 week to figure out how to do the job, or does it take a new person 1 year to figure out how to do a job? That's something we can control as people who are designing businesses, building businesses.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting that you say that because I spend a lot of time trying to convince clients that you don't have to recruit on experience. You can recruit on potential, because 99% of the complaints I get from business owners is attitude. They don't have the right attitude. So I said, but you recruited on experience, not an attitude. And guess what? You always complain about the attitude. So I said, why don't you recruit on attitude, get the right mindset, the right type of person, and then train them on everything else. And it's quite interesting trying to convince people about. I know there's some jobs where they need technical knowledge or qualification, but most jobs don't. Most jobs are not. You can train them.
Most jobs, the barrier to entry is actually quite low, especially if you can design your business in a way where things are standardized, things are process driven, things are tech enabled, then suddenly the barrier to entry gets much lower. I can honestly say in all the years that we've been building the team, sometimes rebuilding the team, I've looked at one CV, one resume, and that was for our financial control. Because if someone's building financial models, I mean, let's make sure he's done it before, you know. But other than that, it's been, and people think I'm mad for this, but I'll never apologize because it seems to work. I'm recruiting or potentially recruiting the person in front of me. So I'm not recruiting a CV. So you've just got to figure out the person in front of you. And I think I absolutely agree with you for the vast majority of roles, especially if it's a sort of modern business with some tech enablement and things are, a little bit easier than maybe they were, 30 years ago or something. You can just focus on attitude. I agree.
Yeah, train everything else. So one of the things that is becoming a more common question now, and years ago never asked this question, how is AI affecting your business?
AI is enabling everything we do. So we've got two big AI tools that we continue to invest in, and just as a side point, Asari, I've been into AI since before it was cool. So I studied cognitive science and AI at Leeds Uni almost 20 years ago. So, and it's actually amazing to see the stuff that I studied 15, 20 years ago in a textbook actually being in everyone's phone. I mean, it's an amazing time to be alive. Bit slightly scary time to be alive, but also an amazing time to be alive. Generally, amazing times in history are also a little bit scary, but that's okay. And actually, one of our techies the other day, he just tried this new tool, and he was in shock at how human-like it was. And then I tried it, and it was a voice agent, and I tried it, and I understood his shock. It was the first time in my life that I've been speaking to something that I know is AI, but I didn't want to hang up on it because I thought it would be rude.
Wow.
And I could see myself going, oh, well, sorry, I have to go. And I had to sort of stop myself and say, it's not a person. You can just close the laptop. But everything in my mind was telling me you're talking to a person. So anyway, here's the point. Our tech guy had just gone through this same experience, and you could see that he was a little bit rattled, you could say, by it. And he was saying, this is going to change everything. This is going to change everything. You just imagine this guy's whole life is just AI and code, AI and code. It's just in his own head. He's like Neo in the Matrix. He just sees code everywhere. Yeah. And I had to tell him, look, it's okay. In the last 100 years, we've been through 2 world wars and the Cold War. It's going to be okay. I appreciate it was a very, very well designed voice agent on a very pretty website. Humanity is going to be okay. We are adaptive people, and generally we'll see the benefits of it. So, to answer your question, Asari, the 2 AI tools that we are really using a lot in our business. One is Pathos Mind, which is our in-house AI agent. So think of that as the sort of back end of everything that we do. So Pathos Mind monitors more than 50,000 news sources every day. It can draft and outline articles in real time. So if it sees something that could be relevant to the coaching industry, it can research Asari and it can write an article and it can send that to Asari within a minute or 2 of that story appearing. So it's a superhuman PR brain that's just always working. And then we have Priscilla, which is more customer facing. So Priscilla is our virtual publicist. So Priscilla can join a Zoom call, like the call that we're on. She can observe the call, take notes. If she hears anything newsworthy, she can do more of her own research around it. And then she can share articles with us and say, sorry, it was really interesting what you said to Omar earlier. I've actually written an article based on it. What do you think? Do you need me to rewrite it? Would you like me to get it published? And you can just have a conversation with her. So those are 2 big tools, and it's very important to us because potentially if the world goes in the direction that the headlines are telling us it's going in, this is going to have a transformational effect on our business. And obviously that has big financial benefits. But even if that doesn't happen, it's very important for us to future-proof the business. So it's an insurance policy, and I think just to round this off, I think people still like people. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, especially for high stakes activities. So anything professional services, I think people still want to talk to a human accountant, a human lawyer, a human PR
Yeah.
in most cases. But what they will increasingly want is for that person to have superhuman powers and superhuman efficiency. So that's really what we're building for our team.
No, brilliant. Yeah. Do you do much reading? How do you enhance your knowledge or your business knowledge? Is there any particularly books or podcasts or anything like that that you particularly like to look at?
Yeah, usually when I read, I try to read something not business related so it can refresh my mind a little bit. So my favorite book is L'étranger, The Outsider by Albert Camus, which is definitely nothing to do with business. But I've lost count of the number of times I've read it. And I think the point of the book is really everyone has to figure out what meaning they give their lives and what meaning they give events. So maybe that's something that entrepreneurs might benefit from. At the moment, I am reading a business book, and let me tell you what it's called. It's let me just unfold my foldable phone. This book is about Nvidia and Jensen Huang, but there are two that have come out recently. So I'll tell you which one I'm reading. I'm reading The Thinking Machine, Jensen Huang, Nvidia, and the World's Most Coveted Microchip. Amazing book, absolutely amazing man. And maybe a little bit more nuanced than the average Silicon Valley billionaire.
Sounds interesting.
They're all fascinating people, but I think Jensen Huang is particularly interesting, and also in things like his management style. I think one of the interesting things is he has 60 direct reports,
Wow.
whereas the textbook will tell you, 6 or 7 is enough. So it's just a very, very interesting man who's made the company his life's work. That's interesting. I'd recommend that if you want a business book. Or if you
Yeah,
want
very
something
interesting.
philosophical, The Outsider by Albert Camus. That's so whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get some fascinating business books and other book recommendations. So phenomenal. Yeah, I bought many of them. Yeah. If you could do it all over again, would you do anything different?
No, it's impossible. That's a mug's game. You can't think like that because you don't know. If you're trying to model reality, there are too many variables. So you can reduce reality down and say, well, I would have done that because I think that doing that would have led to X, Y, Z. Well, you don't know that because there are infinite things that you're not even aware of. So you're being very silly. The game is much more complicated than you can possibly imagine. So the only thing you can do is to do what you think is best, and it's really a bit pointless, I think, thinking about possible worlds because you have no idea how those worlds would actually look.
No, it's interesting because people talk about the only thing you can do is now. You can't do tomorrow and you can't do yesterday. So the only time you can affect is what you're doing at the moment. So why waste time worrying about what if, what if, what if? Because it can drive you crazy, which is interesting. So just
But I feel slightly different about the future because you you can try to influence the future. You can try
definitely.
to influence the future. So I think it's when people are thinking about the past, I think that's when it's just a waste of energy. But look, the future is a product of now. So you focus on what you're building now. You're building the future now. So focus on that. That's a good use of everyone's energy, I think.
No, 100%. Well, it's a bit like eating decent food or having a decent exercise program, isn't it? You can go to the gym today, you can eat good food today, and you'll see no difference tomorrow. It's not gonna. It's a future thing, isn't it? As you said, and it takes discipline to say I'm going to keep on exercising, and eventually I'm going to see the results. So, but as you said, but you can only do it in the now. But you got to believe that it's worth doing. But it's quite interesting, yeah, because it's quite difficult to convince people, some people, of doing anything different. Because if the results aren't immediate, well, what's the benefit right now? And you say, well, you can't get benefit right now. It's going to take time. You got to put a bit of time into it. Yeah, but what can I do now? Which is partly why people look for that what they call the golden nugget, this great thing that if I just tell you this one thing, you're going to be rich. Well, if it was that easy, we would all be rich, wouldn't we? So It's never that simple. Here's one for you. I give you £100 million to invest in business. What would you do with it?
We'd invest it in pathos.
Ah, good
Easy.
answer.
It's easy. It's the easiest question you've asked.
And what would that give you if you could have that kind of crazy money, really, to invest? Would it mean that you could literally revolutionize PR for millions of
Yeah.
business owners?
Yeah,
You
I
could
think
help more people.
it would take our technology to the point where it's as good as any type of AI anywhere in the world. And we'd have a physical presence in each of the 53 countries where we have a commercial presence through our customers. And honestly, I would probably get a pretty good ROI on the 100 million quid.
Yeah, yeah, pretty cool. And then my last question is always, there's so many people could be listening to this. People might hear it and think it's really interesting, but I want my business to be better. I want to grow. I want to start a business. What few tips would you give somebody who's in business who's looking to grow? Is there any things you would leave them with to say, things to think about?
I don't know. I don't think I'm really in a position where I should be giving business advice. But call me back in 10 years and I'll tell you if I feel entitled to an opinion.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. Very few people pass on a question. It's like, I want to give advice to other people.
I never give advice. I never give advice. One of my rules is I only give advice if it's really, really asked for by someone. And even then, I sort of really think because it's just my perspective. So why would I? What's that got to do with anyone else? Yeah, everyone's in their
Yeah,
own world.
yeah, it's interesting. Uh, you'll be surprised how many people I could be on a group program with, and I'm like coaching the people in the room, or on Zoom nowadays, it's virtual, and individual business owners start coaching other business owners.
Wow.
And I have to try and hold them back and say, hold on, hold on, hold on. I don't think they're paying to get coached by everybody else. Let's just leave the coaching to me and start with I have to encourage them to start with the word I. So we rather than say people do this and people do this and I think this and I think that, say I, and then that changes it because then you can say, well, I will do it. That's fine. Rather than people should do it. Are you doing it? So it's quite funny.
Because you
Yeah,
don't know. Because you don't know what someone's circumstances are. You just don't know. You don't know everything that's going on with them or with their business, and it just doesn't make sense to assume that what's right for you is right for them.
yeah,
It's very
yeah. No, great point. No, but absolute been a pleasure. I just want to say thank you. Times has flown by. Lots of nuggets there, good books, lots of little things we can learn from. And I wish you great success because one of my big things is how many business owners can we help? There's so many people out there would die for a little bit of publicity in a quality, as you said, newspaper or quality place, but they don't know how to do it. So now they can contact your company and say, let's see if you can help me. And there's such lovely stories out there. I mean, I love listening to business owner stories, but yeah, we can help just a little bit, give them that publicity, all the better. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You, Asari. Good speaking to you.
Thank you.